The Odyssey. The war had dragged on for 10 long years. The Greeks had spilled blood beneath Troy's walls, but the city still stood, proud and unbroken. The gods watched from Olympus, divided in their loyalties, while heroes on both sides faded into dust. And then came a different kind of weapon, not forged of bronze, but born from a mind that refused defeat. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, known not for brute strength but for sharp wit, conceived a trick so daring it would become legend. A giant wooden horse, hollow within, was crafted by the Greeks and left at Troy's gates. The Greek army, feigning defeat, burned their tents and sailed out of sight, leaving behind the horse as a supposed offering to Athena, the goddess of war. The Trojans, wearied by siege and longing for peace, dragged the gift inside their walls. That night they celebrated their victory with wine, music, and open gates. But as darkness cloaked the city, the belly of the horse opened. Odysseus and the finest Greek warriors emerged silently, blades in hand. They opened the city's gates from within, and the returning army poured in like a flood. Troy, once mighty, was reduced to ash by dawn. The war was over. But for Odysseus, it was not the end. It was the beginning of something far greater and far more cruel. He longed only to return to Ithaca, to the embrace of his wife, Penelope, and the eyes of his young son, Telemachus. But the gods, proud and easily slighted, had other plans, especially Poseidon, god of the sea, whose son Polyphemus had been blinded by Odysseus. The ocean turned hostile, and so began the journey, not across maps, but through myth and hardship. His troubles came swiftly. At the land of the Cicons, his men, drunk on victory, raided thoughtlessly. The Cicons struck back. Many Greeks were lost before Odysseus could drag his men away. They sailed on, weary, until they reached the land of the Lotus Eaters. There, gentle people offered fruit so sweet it made men forget home. Those who ate the lotus wandered in blissful amnesia. Odysseus had to force them back to the ships, tears in their eyes, their minds still dreaming. Then came the island of the Cyclopes, monstrous giants with a single eye. Polyphemus, son of Poseidon, trapped them in his cave. Day by day, he devoured them. Odysseus gave him wine and claimed his name was Nobody. Drunk and dazed, Polyphemus fell into sleep, and Odysseus and his men drove a red-hot stake into his eye. Blinded and screaming, Polyphemus cried out, "Nobody has hurt me!" And so no help came. They escaped beneath the bellies of sheep, unseen. But pride betrayed Odysseus. As they fled, he shouted his real name across the waves. And from that moment, Poseidon's wrath followed every sail. They came to Aeolus, god of the winds, who gifted Odysseus a bag containing all winds but one, the one that would guide them home. But greed overtook his crew. Thinking it treasure, they opened the bag. The winds howled free and hurled them back into the unknown. Next, the Laestrygonians, giants, who crushed ships like toys and devoured men like meat. Only Odysseus's ship escaped. They drifted to the island of Circe, an enchantress whose beauty masked danger. She turned his men into pigs. But with a gift from Hermes, Odysseus resisted her spell. He stayed with her for a year, healing, resting, but never forgetting home. At last, Circe warned him, to reach Ithaca, he must speak with the dead. So he sailed to the edge of the world, where the living meet the shadows. In the land of the dead, he found the ghost of Tiresias, the prophet. Tiresias warned him of more trials, the wrath of Poseidon, the sacred cattle of Helios, and the suitors who consumed his kingdom. Odysseus wept as he saw the ghost of his mother, who had died waiting for him. He saw fallen comrades, heroes of Troy, their voices faint as wind. He left the underworld changed. Sailing onward, he faced the sirens, creatures whose voices promised knowledge, glory, and desire. Curious, Odysseus had his men plug their ears with wax and bind him to the mast. As their song filled the air, he begged to be released. But the ropes held. They passed safely. Next came Scylla and Charybdis, one a six-headed monster, the other a whirlpool. Odysseus chose Scylla. She snatched 6 men from his deck, screaming, but the ship sailed on. They reached the island of Helios, the sun god. Though warned not to touch the sacred cattle, his men, driven by hunger, slaughtered them. Zeus struck the ship with lightning. The sea swallowed all but Odysseus. He drifted to the island of Calypso, a lonely nymph who kept him in her arms for 7 years. She offered him love, comfort, even immortality. But Odysseus's heart remained on Ithaca. His eyes searched the horizon. At last, the gods relented. Hermes came, commanding Calypso to let him go. She wept, but obeyed. Odysseus built a raft, and once again, Poseidon sent a storm. He washed ashore in the land of the Phaeacians, half dead, more memory than man. The Phaeacians gave him food, clothing, and finally, passage home. After 20 years, Odysseus stepped onto the soil of Ithaca, not as a hero, not in fanfare, but as a beggar, cloaked in disguise by Athena, the gray-eyed goddess. His palace was overrun by suitors, arrogant men who feasted on his wealth and courted his wife. Penelope, clever and faithful, had delayed them for years by weaving a shroud by day and unraveling it by night. But time had worn thin, and she had set a challenge. I will marry the one who can string Odysseus's bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads. None could. Until the beggar stepped forward. Laughter filled the hall, but then he strung the bow with ease, aimed, and let fly. The arrow passed through all 12. Silence fell. Odysseus dropped the disguise. With bow in hand, he reclaimed his name, his hall, and his throne. The suitors fell. Peace returned. Penelope, still cautious, tested him once more, speaking of their marriage bed. Only he knew it was carved from a living olive tree, unmovable, rooted deep in stone. She ran to him. Tears flowed. The king was truly home, not because of might, not because of prophecy, but because his spirit would not break. The Odyssey is not merely a tale of adventure. It is a story of loyalty, cunning, and the long, aching pull of home. Odysseus did not win by sword, but by will. And after all the gods, monsters, storms, and years, he proved one thing above all. He never stopped coming back. In the end, these myths are not just ancient echoes. They are timeless reminders that the path of a hero is never straight, that strength without wisdom can crumble empires, and that sometimes the greatest victory is simply finding your way back home. The gods may have watched from above, but it was the hearts of mortals that carried the story forward, beating, breaking, burning, and always enduring. And so, the legend lives on.